Look, I think you're probably right. I think Fiona did a great job. I mean, it's a real challenge for programme makers actually to commit to 2 hours in prime time, BBC One, where most of the audience would be expecting MasterChef or Casualty, to listen to what we were given last night.
What did you
And,
learn from last night, Katy, if anything?
well, I think the first hour was let's just park that. The second hour, look, I think, you've already played the clips in terms of those main top lines. I felt that Sunak started very badly but improved over his half hour. Starmer, I thought, just had a big confidence about him that I hadn't seen before in this campaign, but didn't have all the answers. I was left thinking, I'm not sure he cares about that. He bulldozed through a lot of what he said, but agree, Fiona probably held the day. Going back to question time, it's a big brand. We've seen so many of these interviews. You and your programme on your network have had many, many yourself. But to see it 2 hours in prime time, question time, I think it's a big thing for the leaders. They can't drop the ball on those types of programmes. And I think they both struggled to an extent.
As they went to their separate dressing rooms with their respective teams, to take what you've just said, Katy, and I think I probably concur with you, I think there would have been a spring in the step for Sir Keir. And actually, in fairness, Sir Ed Davey didn't perform badly. Katy?
Yeah, no, exactly. Look, Ed got through it. He's actually had, I think, a really good campaign for the Lib Dems, and I can completely see why falling off any kind of vehicle into any kind of water has worked for him, because he's just done, it's raised his profile. Together with that Care video, which was incredibly good, I think he's had a really good campaign. The figures and the polls show that he may well come out much better than perhaps he hoped some months ago on polling day. So good for him. Swinney, I think, is always going to struggle because, let's face it, most of the audience don't really probably know who he is, or certainly can't vote for him.
Well,
so, the last
it's an
two...
extraordinary quirk of British TV regulation, isn't it, that gentleman is there when you think about it?
Well, it is. And, a little bit behind the scenes there, when I was negotiating these programmes in 2019, one of the things all the parties will be doing is screaming for prime time, and as you know, the broadcasters want their head-to-head, as in the two main leaders. And this is a way for the BBC to satisfy the other two. And by the way, don't think for a moment that Farage hasn't been screaming himself from behind the scenes to try and get on it. The big conversations about where he sits. And I know for a fact that he, tried desperately to get into that programme, but lost out to date.
I'm sure he did. Katy, always good speaking with you. Katy Searle was editor of politics for the BBC, now consultant with Coulson Partners, 13 after 7. Let's turn to Jack Doyle. Now, Jack was Downing Street Director of Communications under Boris Johnson. He's now with Headland Consultancy. And I want to put to you the assertion from Sir Keir last night, if I can, Jack, which indeed is the splash page 1 of the Daily Mail. Corbyn would have been a better PM than Boris. Jack Doyle, morning.
Morning, Nick. Well, I don't think it'll surprise you to hear me say I don't agree with that, but I'm not even really sure Starmer agrees with it. And it struck me as very odd and him very much wandering off of his script. He's really struggled this election to come up with an explanation for why he said that Corbyn would be a great PM. And look, Jeremy Corbyn was miles outside of the mainstream of British politics, and I think the anti-Semitism stuff is too easily forgotten. And, Starmer has spent a lot of time distancing himself from Corbyn. So to say something like that, it struck me as a blunder and quite revealing.
Jack, there's a sense... I was at an event a couple of days ago with some fairly hefty business movers and shakers. There is a sense that if the wheels hadn't come off the Conservative bus, the engine blown, the exhaust fallen off and the tyres are flat, that actually Sir Keir Starmer would have been put under a lot more pressure. But with the Conservatives' brilliant gift of giving away tries or scoring old goals, that's never happened. Is that fair?
Yes, I think it is to a degree. I mean, there's a little while left to go, Nick. I think we still have time for the media to give him a bit more of a hard time and to focus a bit more on policy. I mean, the most revealing thing that's come out this week was that the answer to your question about what constitutes normal working people. Yeah. But I think that's true. I think people haven't really got hold of Starmer and really shaken him hard enough. I think, if anything, people are thinking about what a Labour majority looks like, how big it could be, given the astonishing MRP polls that we've been seeing, and like you say, just standing back and looking at the Tory party, a once great campaigning machine, just imploding.
Final question I'm going to ask my listeners: if they still held the Conservatives any esteem, how much damage would this possible betting scandal do? What am I going to hear, Jack? How damaging is it?
I think it's one more thing that Rishi Sunak can't get away from. It's in isolation, one person. It's a frustration, but I think coming on top of everything else that's happened, it just feels like he can't get a break and he can't get a word in edgeways. So yeah, I think it's bad and it's dominating the news. That's the real problem for him.